Several students are having their head, neck, and back checked out.
2 students were taken to the hospital after a car and bus collided this morning in Raleigh.
It was down that street where this school bus accident happened. 3 students out of 33 who were taken away to the hospital.
Just this year, CBS North Carolina has reported on several Wake County school bus crashes. However, getting a total number of crashes for each school year is nearly impossible. In September, I requested public records on how many bus crashes happened in Wake County. I was told Wake Schools does not keep those records.
They don't track it at all. That's kind of scary.
Debbie and Aaron Mears wait for their grandkids to get off Wake school buses nearly every day. They tell me they're surprised Wake County doesn't keep track of crashes.
I'd like to think that if they did, they'd be able to analyze what is the root of the problem and deal with it.
And there are a lot of places in Raleigh that school buses have no business going.
In the middle of the day, Spencer E. Jenkins has a few hours to get chores done. But in the mornings and afternoons, he's busy driving students to and from school. He's done this in Wake County for 25 years. And in that time, he was in one fender bender, not involving children. That incident will go into Jenkins' file. When there's a crash, the district emails Transportation, Human Resources, and Risk Management. Each at-fault accident is investigated. But unless you look through all the 780 bus driver files, which are closed to the public, or inspect thousands of emails, there's no way to determine how many crashes happen, where they happen, or why they happen each year. This was news to Jenkins when I told him.
What do you mean they don't? What do you mean they don't keep? They don't keep track. They don't keep
Any kind of document of that. So
Why wouldn't they?
Jenkins says if the district wants to reduce the number of crashes, they need to track when, where, and why accidents happen. And other school districts agree.
You can't just have an accident and ignore it. You have to investigate it, to make sure your operation is safe.
Scott Denton is the Assistant Superintendent of Auxiliary Services in Durham. He walked me through Durham's transportation station, where buses are being repaired. This school year, Durham Public Schools has reviewed 57 accidents.
We keep records of those crashes, and we'll go back and review those and see if there are trends to make sure that we're educating our drivers on things that they need to look out for and make the road safer, make them safer.
With about 18,000 students riding Durham buses, Denton says it's worth the effort.
I think if you ever give up on the idea that you already arrived and you're as safe as you can get, then you're probably in the wrong job.
And people like the Mears wish Wake County would do the same thing.
Hey, Sean, I spoke to that guardian earlier in the day in person, and she told me that she notified police on Friday. And police documents that we were able to obtain shows that is the case. However, police did not notify that these 2 children were missing until 5 days later. That's today. Now, I was in the neighborhood. I spoke to some of the people that live right across the street from this family, and they're asking why police waited so long. Our cameras were rolling Wednesday night when 13-year-old Daquan Thornton and his brother, 9-year-old Emmanuel Wilson, walked back to their door, still holding the dinners police got for them. The children's guardian told me off camera the boys were worn out. She was happy to finally have them home because, unbeknownst to the community, the boys were missing for days. Back on Friday, police got the report of the missing children. The report obtained by CBS North Carolina shows the call came in at 11:20 at night. 5 days later, police sent out a missing juvenile release at 4:30 in the afternoon. Nearly 2 hours later came an updated alert from police and a push alert from CBS North Carolina saying the boys were safe. Neighbors who live on Stevenson Street, where the boys went missing, said they're disappointed it took 5 days to hear about this incident.
I have no idea, until y'all showed up, that these kids were missing since last Friday. So, and I think Durham Police Department need to do a better job of alerting the community so the community can look out for our kids.
So we took these concerns to Durham Police to see why there was a 5-day delay between the report of the 2 missing children and when Durham Police notified the community. However, no one from the police department has responded. Now we're going to continue to ask police officials exactly why it took that long to put this release out. As soon as we get an update, we will update you online and on air. Now, I did ask police if there are any pending charges in this case. However, they told me it is still under investigation. Reporting live here in Durham, I'm AJ Janavel for CBS North Carolina.
Then that numbness turned into anger, and that anger turned into sadness. And it wasn't sad for me, but it was sad because this is my baby.
This is the voice of one of the victim's moms. Police say Isam Rama used an ice cream truck to lure this woman's son to his van to sexually assault him. We're not using her name or showing her face to protect her child's identity. On Friday, November 3rd at 5:40 in the evening, Durham police notified the community they needed help tracking down a man wanted for sexual assault. A few hours later, that same day, Rama turned himself in. But we discovered police heard from parents about two incidents, one October 25th and another November 1st. This isn't the first time we've asked Durham police about a delay in notifying the public. Back in July, Durham police waited 5 days to notify the community 2 children were reported missing. Within hours of that release, the boys returned home safely. And in June, Durham police waited several days to notify the community of an armed man wanted in several kidnappings. Around the time of that incident, Durham Police Chief Saralyn Davis said changes would happen to make sure the community was notified sooner. I came here to the Durham Police Department to see if anyone could speak to me on camera about this incident. However, I was told no one was available.
I think that the only thing we can do is to hold the police department accountable for that.
Durham City Council member Eddie Davis told me he is sure there will be talks with the police department on how to cut down this delay in the future.
I think as quickly as we can let people know that there is an imminent menace in our midst, that we need to do so as quickly. I think the department probably needs to take a long, hard look at the problems and what may have occurred.
Now, I did speak to Durham Police Department spokesperson Will Glenn today over the phone. He told me the reason for the delay was due to the investigation. Glenn tells me the police department cannot put out information to the public, which they have not yet vetted. However, this is very similar to what I was told about 4 months ago during that kidnapping case that was happening in late June. As well, I was not able to ask any follow-up questions in regards to this investigation, specifically what goes into this vetting process and if and when the Durham Police Department deems it necessary to notify the community of any incidents. We're going to keep working on this, and the minute we find more information on this, we'll keep you up to date online as well as on air. Reporting live here in Durham, I'm AJ Janavel for CBS North Carolina.
For many kids, the chance of playing football like their favorite pro athletes is a dream come true.
And when you get into the end zone, like, it feels like you number one or something.
O'Shea Shelley, like many young men, wants to play professional football. As a 7th grader playing on W.A. Patillo's middle school in Edgecombe County, he says he was working towards his goal, but it almost came to an end on this field.
Then I fell on the ground, and I felt like my leg rising, like blood coming up, but I thought my bone felt like my knee.
During a 2016 fall practice, Shelley tore his ACL. These doctor's notes the family gave to me showed the extent of Shelley's injuries. But Shelley says he and his family wouldn't find that out for hours after the injury.
I asked my coach, can you take me to the hospital? Then he said no.
Instead, Shelley tells me his coach told him to walk it off. He says he had to wait 30 minutes for practice to end before his coach drove him not to a hospital, but to his house.
But they showed me no concern about my son. And, you know, it really hurt me.
Shelley's mom, Starshita Petaway, wasn't home at the time. Instead, she tells me she found out about the injury secondhand while at work.
He was like, Star, you need to rush out. Your son's been injured really bad. And I like panicked, you know, because I didn't know what had happened. I thought my son had died or something.
Petaway says she knows injuries happen in football and understands that, but expects the coaches and the school to do more for her son.
They need to do something about it because they didn't handle it right.
Documents Petaway signed so her son could play football state, in the case of an injury, quote, the student athlete will be treated and transported via ambulance to the nearest hospital, and, quote, a reasonable attempt will be made to contact the parent/legal custodian. Petaway claims neither of these actions happened when her son was injured. I went to Edgecombe County school officials for answers, but school officials declined to speak to me on camera. I even attended a school board meeting, spoke to the district superintendent, requesting to speak to anyone on camera in regards to this incident, but again was declined. Off camera, school spokesperson Susan Hoke told me according to the district's investigation, school officials handled the incident appropriately. In an email, District Assistant Superintendent Mark Wichard told me middle school athletic policy is governed by the Department of Public Instruction, or DPI. But when it comes to injuries in middle school athletics, DPI officials tell me there's no policy for what steps coaches should take. There is a DPI policy which states schools should have licensed athletic trainers or first responders at all practices and games. Petaway says W.A. Patillo did not have that for her son.
I mean, for any child, not just mine. I feel like that wasn't right. And I would ask them how would they feel if that was their child.
It wasn't handled right because, like, I don't care if there's no papers and that, and like someone hurt, you should give them help.
Reporting in Edgecombe County, A.J. Janavel for CBS, North Carolina.
Sean, Sharon, Jacayla Johnson and her family tell me the suspension was inappropriate, and now they're looking for an apology.
I was feeling embarrassed because they called me out of everybody.
15-year-old Garner Magnet High School sophomore Jacayla Johnson tells me she was in Chinese class with about 30 other students when a school resource officer interrupted the class saying they smelled weed from the hall. After about 5 minutes of searching the class, Johnson says the officer singled her out.
They told me to spread my fingers and they smelled my fingers.
Johnson tells me she was taken to the office and patted down. An officer made her remove her shoes and also went through her book bag. According to Wake County school documents obtained by CBS North Carolina, there's no mention of finding drugs, but instead, Johnson was suspended for 5 days based solely on a pungent smell. She was also required to take drug classes or face suspension for the rest of the year. Johnson's mother tells me when the school called to notify her of the suspension, she couldn't believe what they were saying.
I said, not my child. I said, you had the wrong child.
Tamika Johnson tells me the day of her daughter's suspension, she took her to a medical lab to get a drug test, and everything came back negative. Armed with the results, Johnson took her daughter to the school for an apology and to be reinstated into classes. But instead, the pair were given another official document, this time saying Jacayla was in possession of marijuana.
And I said, well, you checked this box and wrote on here possession of marijuana, but you're saying that you didn't find any marijuana on her. And he was like, that is correct. And he said, well, there was no other option to check. In my head, you don't check anything then.
Her mother tells me she now fears this will follow her daughter for the rest of her life, and she's worried this is happening to other students who might not know how to stand up for themselves.
Now, as for the removal of the suspension, that has to come from an official appeal to the school board. Jacayla's appeal date is set for May 18th. But she tells me during her suspension, she missed at least 3 tests and is now struggling to catch up.